Welcome to Data Science Perspectives. This series focuses on analytics and data science professionals from across industry to learn about how their career unfolded, what skills they look for when hiring, and what trends they think are coming next. I'm your host, Bill Franks. Let's get to it. Well, welcome to this episode of Data Science Perspectives. Today, I'm going to be talking with my friend Ameet Shetty. I first met Ameet here in Atlanta back when he was the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at SunTrust Bank, which is now Truist, one of the biggest banks in the country. He's a longtime Atlanta native and one of many that I'll be featuring in this series. After getting an undergraduate degree from the University of Georgia and an MBA from Georgia State, he began his career in some finance roles at companies like IBM and Intercontinental Hotels Group. He then made the switch over to the financial world with Fifth Third Bank and then 14 years at SunTrust. While at SunTrust, he shifted over time to more and more focus on data and analytics and eventually ended up in the Executive VP and Chief Data and Analytics Officer role, leading into the merger SunTrust did with BB&T to now become Truist. More recently, after a stint at McDonald's Corporation as their Chief Data and Analytics Officer, he's landed at Pilot Flying J as their Chief Data Officer. Now, for those of you who live in the region where Pilot Flying J has a presence, you'll be familiar with them. For those who aren't, though, they're a massive chain of gas and convenience stores, one of the biggest private companies in America, in fact, with revenue of around $30 billion. So big role for Ameet to step into, and I look forward, as I'm sure you do, to hearing some of his insights. Well, hey, Ameet, thanks so much for joining me today from Tennessee. I hope you're having a good morning.
Great morning. Glad to be here. Good to talk to you as always.
Yeah, well, what we're going to do today is just walk through some thoughts you have, given your long career in the analytics and data science space. And one thing I've noticed, you did start back in your early days in the finance, more in the finance space, and over time you shifted more and more and more over to data and analytics. How'd you make that transition, and what led you to make it?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I first started my career, I really was pretty laser focused on sticking in finance. I always had the mindset of loving numbers, being in the area of the CFO and kind of all things there about, taxes, accounting, treasury, you name it. But as I continue to grow and get into different companies, I realized there's so many neat jobs out there. And I opened myself up to say, you know what, if something comes my way, even if it's a little bit out of my comfort zone, I'm going to try to give it a shot and see where it might lead. And so over the years, I really got, to be fortunate to try a lot of different things. I found myself in operations at one point, was in supply chain and strategic outsourcing. Did a multiple amount of roles within finance, but also technology. I started my career with IBM, so was around IT almost, right off the bat, and really enjoyed spending time with technology professionals. Found it very fascinating and an area that was always evolving. The combination of finance, that coupled with technology, just naturally started to lead me in certain directions. And as many of my colleagues know, the credit crisis really changed the game around data and analytics in my mind. And this is around that 2008, 2010 timeframe. Made a big impact on me and my career. Being in banking at that time, a lot of changes were occurring. And a lot of regulatory pressure to really understand what would happen to our organization under various financial scenarios or stressed economic scenarios. And so the ability to forecast and leverage your information and data became more and more important. And so I was a key part of that team early on and got to really understand and see how important data was and how critical it was and how it was changing as technology was also changing, right? Big data was just coming on at that time. Modeling techniques were improving at such a quick rate. And I was in the middle of all of that, given my background and experiences, and got very much focused on changing my career and pushing in that direction, and have never looked back. It's been an exciting journey. It's something that I've truly enjoyed. And I think the reason that I've enjoyed it so much is I'm somebody who really doesn't want to wake up and come in and do the same thing over and over again. Every day there's a new problem to solve. There's a new area of opportunity, things that you weren't even thinking about, weren't even on your radar screen, 2 or 3 days before, all of a sudden are. So exciting space to be in my mind. And then actually the area that I continue to feel like, regardless of what industry you're in, serious investments are being made. So good place to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you mentioned, you spent a lot of time in the financial sector and riding through some ups and downs in that, and then you more recently made a complete switch, talking about getting into some different roles where you're now in the retail and hospitality space, both with your time at McDonald's and now Pilot Flying J. How's that transition been from the one industry into the other for you?
I've really enjoyed getting to see different industries. Finance the financial sector was a great place to be. I learned a lot. Obviously, a lot of the activity around data and analytics was driven by the regulatory needs, and there was obviously a shift to customer analytics. But really, where I am today is super exciting. I mean, our entire focus is on improving the customer experience. We talk about what aspects of our organization and what areas can we use data and analytics and insights into customer behaviors to help improve that. And I found it from almost the get-go just an interesting area to spend time on analytics, because one, you can really drive your organization. You drive sales, you drive the customer experience, i.e. client intimacy. So much going on. Here at Pilot, it's an exciting time for us. I came in with a mindset of knowing that Pilot was in an industry that data and analytics had really not gotten tapped into enough, and that the opportunity set across the organization would be huge. And that's what I'm finding. Pilot is amazing when it comes to data. Just every aspect of the value chain of how we deliver to our clients, there are opportunities to continue to improve that experience. And so we have a lot of initiatives underway today that, and I'm able to move at such a faster rate to help, make sure that we bring value to the company.
It's interesting. I think one thing you may have hinted at it, but I'd be curious at the impact is obviously in the financial space. You spent years heavily regulated, a lot of limitations and rules and approvals to do what would be considered some basic stuff in other industries. And now, of course, in the retail space, very much less regulation. So how has that enabled you to move more quickly, both, other than the company culture, just that, being able to actually go after some ideas without a lot of paperwork?
Yeah, it's a great question. I will tell you that we, just like every other industry, pay a lot of attention to PII type data. And, there's so many regulations out there. CCPA is probably the one that tops the mind the most. We definitely try to protect our clients' information. I mean, we are not without, I'll say, governance and oversight, and we take it really seriously. At the same time, to your point, the financial sector, it's tough. I mean, I'll give you a great example. When I was in banking, there was a lot of great information that we could get from our mortgage company, right? Every time an individual makes an application for a loan, you have all this rich data, not just about them, but where they're employed, what their assets are. But because of regulation, you couldn't really use that to help somebody see and say, hey, here's some investment products that we might want to use or that might be really good for you, or here's some opportunities for you to consolidate some debt and get better rates. There was a lot of protections in the system for a good variety of reasons, and that prevented you from creating a better client experience. At Pilot, that's not the case. I get to basically, once I have customers' information, I can use it to benefit them across the various lines of businesses that we have. and across our entire value chain. And that's exciting, right? I mean, we are always very protective of making sure that we're using it in the right manner. But overall, our ability to leverage that data is so critical. At the same time, we can also move quickly. We do a lot of test and learn, and at the end of the day, try to make sure that if we find opportunities that might make sense, we at least try it out. If it works, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. So it's been a different experience because regulation does cause so many challenges in industries like the financial sector.
Yeah, well, one thing you've mentioned is, the opportunities at Pilot, and I think they brought you in to go after those opportunities. How are you prioritizing, right? Given all the things that you can do, what's been kind of your strategy in terms of identifying where you're starting and where you're placing your first bets?
What's most interesting for me about prioritization is it's not really about what I want to prioritize. It's really about what does the leadership team at Pilot want to prioritize? What lines of businesses are we focused on growing? What are the areas that we can make an impact, not just from revenue and improving profit margins, but also improving the customer experience? I think we have done a great job of finding those pockets where we think we can make really quick improvements. And sometimes they're not always the areas that are the biggest, biggest opportunities, because sometimes the biggest opportunities also require a whole lot of lift. And there are smaller opportunities where a little bit of lift can create a big impact. So we've spent a lot of time balancing ROI, balancing customer improvement and customer quality and, client experience components of both financial and non-financial measures to figure out what we should prioritize first and foremost.
Great. I guess as you think about it, you've had a variety of roles, a number of companies now. If you were to pick just, one or two traits or skills you have that you think have been most what enabled you to succeed in your career, what would those be?
That's a great question. I think first and foremost, I think you have to be authentic. I think people look to individuals who really come across with some sense of authenticity, have a sense of humility about them, as well as ability to build trust and partnerships. No one person ever is successful on their own. I think it's really important to really know how to partner with people around you and pull the best out of everyone. I think all of us have unique backgrounds, lots of knowledge. Most of the people that I find that are the strongest leaders are always looking to have people working with them that are smarter than they are. And that is such a huge thing. And coming across with really a genuine sense of care for what you're doing and passion around what you're doing always helps, I think, lift everybody around you and actually get at the core of what you're trying to accomplish. So I think authenticity, being who you are, trust, humility, all of those things are really, really key to have in your back pocket, and remind yourself every single day that the most everybody around you is trying to accomplish the same goals that you have, that you're working together as a team. So that teamwork aspect is just at the core of it so important.
It's funny. You're just reinforcing a trend that I've seen over and over again over the years, which is even people who are professionals in what's a very technical field, many of the most successful people in this field actually don't credit their success to those technical skills, which they often obviously have in a quite good level of depth, or they wouldn't have been able to leverage those other things you've mentioned. But it's really interesting how common it is that that people like yourself credit other things than your technical skills. What would be one thing you wish someone had told you before you started your career that you had to learn the hard way?
Yeah, another great question. I think one of the things that I've probably had to learn the hard way, if I were to say anything, is knowing how to be patient. I think especially when you're early on in your career, you're full of a ton of energy. You've learned all this great stuff about how you can make an impact, and it really does take patience to make sure that you are taking all this great knowledge that you've built up and you're balancing it with everything that's around you and making sure that you fit into an ecosystem and don't just try to force yourself into an ecosystem. Leadership is a quality that I always think about in individuals that comes in different ways, right? I mean, we all have different strengths and weaknesses. But, at the end of the day, I think all of us want to lead in some form or fashion. And it doesn't necessarily mean leading people or leading a specific project. Leadership is the thing that I think about developing all the time, my skills as a leader. So if I were to go back and tell my younger self something, or the one thing I wish people had talked to me about is like, hey, be open to listening, try to really learn from the talented people around you, and try to use that as a building block to your own leadership skills, because they're going to evolve over time. And the leadership that you need in one instance is going to be dramatically different than what you need in another. So leadership is not just this one thing. It's something that comes across across in many, many ways. I tell you, one of the statements at Pilot, we have our CEO uses this kind of tagline, but I think it's really important. And he talks about 4 things: be hungry, be humble, accountable, and be commercial. And when he says that, he's really talking about the core things that I think any individual needs to be successful. And that is be passionate about what you do, right? That's the hungry component of it. Be humble, come in, listen, know that you're not the smartest person in the room. Hold yourself accountable for results. And think about profitability, because at the end of the day, we are a business. We have to make money. And so I always have that in the back of my mind as I think about, the places we need to go and of course, where I've been. And those are the types of things that I wish that I had more of a thought process around early in my career.
That's some great advice there. Turning to that advice, obviously, as you guys grow, you're going to be doing some hiring. What are you looking for these days when you hire someone to be in your analytics and data science organization? What are a couple of the key things you'll be looking for?
Yeah, for me, it starts with integrity. Are you somebody who projects, and I even used the word earlier about authenticity, an authentic approach. You're genuine to who you are. You really want to be here. You've done the research. You know who we are. You've thought to ask the right questions about culture, and that you care about putting yourself in a place to be, successful. Like, it's not just about getting a job, but it's about truly being passionate about putting yourself in a place to be successful for the company as well as for yourself as an individual. So important to make sure that you balance who you are with where the company is going, where the company's culture is, and where it will be down the road. There are a lot of good places out there, a lot of good industries to be in, but you got to follow your passions at some level. If you don't enjoy what you do, you'll never really you'll never give it your all. And that's so critical. So I always look for people who are coming into the door and balancing those things in almost interviewing you as you are interviewing them.
Yeah, it's interesting. So really, you're tying that a little bit to what some of the things you thought have helped make you successful, which is, while certainly you're going to want to see, for example, students coming out of our programs who might be interviewing with you, in the coming months, you're going to want to know that they have the technical ability to execute the kind of work that you need. But there's a lot more that you're also looking for on top of that, it sounds.
Yeah, I mean, I think for every student that, watches this, I would say very simply, your technology skill or your technical skills, not your technology skills, your technical skills are cost of entry, right? What's going to differentiate you is your EQ, where you have that EQ and IQ balance and where you bring those soft skills to bear. And are you somebody who's coachable? Can you be developed into the, higher and higher roles within the organization? Everybody's looking for individuals that bring that balance. And that balance is what's so important, because at the end of the day, those are the leaders that can really take your company to the next level.
That's good. That's some good advice. So let's finish with one last question. As you look out over the next couple of years, what are some of the trends you see coming our way around the analytics and data science space that you'd recommend people pay most attention to?
I know there's a lot of attention right now around machine learning. I think machine learning is going to continue to evolve different methods, and techniques, and that's definitely an area of focus without a doubt, and something that's kind of obvious in my mind. I think the area though that's evolving right now that I think is going to get more and more attention as we start to see AI becoming more and more prevalent is ethics. And the reality of ethics and analytics, and making sure that models don't skew to certain, unintended negative consequences or segregation of aspects of society and things of that nature. So I think it's really important that people focus on the fact that, artificial intelligence can be a great enabler and help us create a much better client experience. But if not managed correctly, it could also do some things that have unintended consequences. And so ethics and analytics, I think, is going to be a topic that continues to evolve and mature as well.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to slip you a $5 bill later because I couldn't agree with you more. And that's why I wrote that book, 97 Things About Ethics Everyone in Data Science Should Know, that came out last fall. So you teed me up perfectly for that. Anyway, Ameet, thank you so much. I know you're busy and you have a lot going on. I very much appreciate your time. I think your insights are going to be really valuable for the audience, and it's much appreciated that you spent some time with me this morning.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Bill. I'm excited to continue to see where things go, and looking forward to partnering with you and the university, and hopefully some of your students will be on our team soon.
That'd be great. All right. Talk to you soon, Ameet. Thanks.
Thanks.